They were supposed to be home by 4. That was the rule. 2 sisters, 1 shopping mall, 1 short walk through a Maryland suburb. Sheila Lyon was 12. Her younger sister, Katherine, called Kate, was 10. On March 25, 1975, they went to Wheaton Plaza during Easter vacation. It was the kind of place families knew. A place with stores, food, crowds, and the ordinary noise of an afternoon. Their home was not far away, about half a mile. Not a highway, not another city, not the middle of nowhere, just a short walk from the mall to the house. But sometime after they were seen near Wheaton Plaza, the 2 girls vanished. No phone call, no return home, no final goodbye. For years, their names stayed frozen in police files. Sheila and Kate, 2 faces on posters, 2 children who disappeared from a public place in the middle of the day. And for more than 4 decades, the question stayed the same. What happened on that half-mile road home? In 1975, Wheaton, Maryland, was part of the growing suburban world outside Washington, D.C. There were shopping centers, quiet neighborhoods, families who believed they knew their streets. Wheaton Plaza was familiar. Parents dropped kids off there. Friends met there. A trip to the mall did not feel like danger. It felt normal. Sheila and Kate Lyon were sisters from the Maryland suburbs. Sheila was the older one. Kate was younger. On that Tuesday, they had time away from school because of Easter break. To their family, this was not supposed to become history. It was supposed to be one more afternoon. They were allowed to go to the mall. They were expected to come back. Their mother told them to be home by 4 o'clock. That deadline would become one of the most painful details in the case. Because when 4 o'clock came, the girls were not home. At first, there may have been hope. Maybe they were late. Maybe they had stopped somewhere. Maybe they had lost track of time. But as minutes passed, hope turned into fear. And then fear turned into a search. The confirmed timeline is short. That is what makes the case so haunting. On the afternoon of March 25th, Sheila and Kate went to Wheaton Plaza. They were seen in the area of the shopping center. According to the FBI, they were last seen just after 2 p.m., walking between Wheaton Plaza and their home. They had less than 2 hours to make it back before the deadline their mother had given them. The distance was about half a mile. That is the part investigators would return to again and again. A half mile, a distance a child could walk in minutes. Somewhere in that small space, the trail went cold. There were sightings. There were tips. There were possible witnesses. There were people who thought they remembered a man watching the girls. But memory can blur. Crowds move. Faces disappear. And in 1975, there were no cell phones in their pockets, no GPS trail, no doorbell cameras, no digital map of their final steps. There was only the place they had been, the time they were expected home, and the silence that followed. By evening, the mall was no longer just a mall. The route home was no longer just a route. Every sidewalk, every parking lot, every stranger from that afternoon became part of a mystery. In many missing person cases, there is a scene, a car left behind, a purse on a seat, a broken window, a door left open. In the Lyon sisters' case, the most disturbing evidence was absence. They did not come home. Their family waited, then searched, then called for help. Police began looking into the disappearance. The story spread quickly. 2 young sisters missing from a shopping mall was every parent's nightmare. Posters went up. Photographs were shared. Witnesses were interviewed. Authorities tried to rebuild the afternoon from fragments. But there was no clear recovery. No body. No place where the case ended. The girls had disappeared without a trace. For years, people in the Washington area remembered the Lyon sisters. Their disappearance became part of local memory, the kind of case parents whispered about when they warned their children to stay close. And still, nothing brought Sheila and Kate back. The case moved from urgent search to open investigation to cold case. Boxes filled with paper. Names were checked. Leads were followed. Some faded. Some failed. Some waited for another generation of detectives to look again. For nearly 40 years, the Lyon sisters case remained unsolved. Then, in 2014, investigators announced a major development. The Montgomery County Police Department Cold Case Squad and the FBI named Lloyd Lee Welch, Jr., also known as Michael Welch, as a person of interest. According to investigators, Welch had been noticed paying attention to the sisters on the afternoon they disappeared. That detail mattered, because Welch was not a random name pulled from nowhere. He had come up before. He had been connected to the case in the early period, but the full picture had not come together. By 2014, detectives were looking again with new focus. They examined old statements. They followed old trails. They looked beyond Maryland. The investigation led them to Bedford County, Virginia, where officials said Welch had a possible connection. That moved the case into another landscape, away from the mall, away from the suburb, into rural roads, wooded areas, and old family connections. Investigators continued to push. In 2015, authorities said they were still seeking information about people who may have had knowledge connected to the disappearance. But this part of the case remains sensitive. Not everyone discussed in an investigation is charged. Not every lead becomes a conviction. The legal resolution came in 2017. Lloyd Lee Welch pleaded guilty in Virginia to 2 counts of first-degree felony murder in the deaths of Sheila and Katherine Lyon. More than 42 years after the girls vanished, the case finally had a conviction. Welch was sentenced to 48 years in prison. For the public, it was an answer. For the family, it was something more complicated. Because a guilty plea can close a courtroom, it cannot return 2 daughters. And it could not answer everything. The official ending is clear in one way. Lloyd Lee Welch was convicted in the murders of Sheila and Kate Lyon. But the case still carries unanswered questions. The most painful one is simple. Where are they? The bodies of Sheila and Kate have never been recovered. That means their family never received the final act that so many families of missing victims need. A place, a burial, a return home. There are also questions about the exact sequence of events after the girls left the mall. Where were they taken? How quickly did it happen? Who knew what? And when? During the investigation, authorities explored possible connections in Virginia. Prosecutors and investigators discussed theories about what may have happened after the abduction. But for a documentary script, the line must stay clear. What is proven in court is one thing. What investigators believed is another. What remains uncharged or unresolved should not be presented as fact. That is important, because the Lyon sisters case is not just a mystery story. It is a real case, a real family, real children, real loss. The responsible way to tell it is to stay with what the record supports. 2 girls disappeared from Wheaton Plaza in 1975. A man named Lloyd Lee Welch was later identified as a person of interest. He pleaded guilty to first-degree felony murder in 2017, and the girls' remains have never been found. That is enough. The truth does not need exaggeration. There are cases that remain unsolved because no one knows where to look. And there are cases that remain haunting even after the courtroom says they are solved. The Lyon sisters' case is both. For decades, the disappearance of Sheila and Kate was a shadow over a community. It changed how parents looked at malls. It changed how families thought about short walks. It became a warning passed from one generation to the next. They were not doing anything extraordinary. They were not far from home. They were two children on a normal afternoon, expected back by 4. That is why the case stayed with people. Because the distance was so small. Because the danger was so close. Because the line between ordinary life and permanent loss was only half a mile long. In 2017, Lloyd Lee Welch stood in court and pleaded guilty. After 42 years, there was finally a legal answer. But the ending was not complete. Sheila and Kate did not come home. Their remains were not found. And the half-mile between Wheaton Plaza and their house remains one of the most chilling distances in American true crime. A short walk, a vanished afternoon, a solved case that still feels unfinished. Sheila Lyon was 12. Katherine Lyon was 10. They were supposed to be home by 4. And nearly 50 years later, that sentence still carries the weight of everything their family lost.